I'm not ready. Okay, now I'm ready. Hey there, folks. Today I want to do a movie that I've liked for a really long time. A movie that I've owned for a really long time as well. This is Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. Now, you know who Sinbad is, right? I mean, I'm not talking about Sinbad, the actor, comedian. So if you Googled Sinbad and you ended up at this video and you were looking for the guy in Jingle All the Way, or rumored to have been in that non-existent genie movie or whatever, no, this is not the place for that. Anyway, anybody that actually cares about Sinbad the Sailor, this is a great movie for you, actually. So, okay, so we're clear. We know what Sinbad we're talking about here. Alright. You might also have heard of Ray Harryhausen. Ray Harryhausen was a special effects genius in my mind. Did a lot of stop motion effects for big budget movies for, you know, anywhere from like the 30s all the way to the 80s. Responsible for animating such creatures as Mighty Joe Young, kind of a pseudo King Kong, Jason and the Argonauts, one of the best examples of his work. Also these 3 Sinbad movies, and also Clash of the Titans in the 80s. So you remember the Kraken and Pegasus, and you remember like Medusa, all that stuff. That's all Ray Harryhausen. I'm sure that I could make an entire video just about all the different monsters that he's made, his history and stuff, and that's for another video. But I guess I should get this out of the way. It is a movie, and it does have human actors in it as well. Sinbad in this one is portrayed by Patrick Wayne, who is the son of John Wayne, and he's pretty cheesy. Whatever, it's all good. His love interest in this movie, I can't remember her character name, but she's portrayed by Jane Seymour. You're probably most familiar with Jane Seymour as Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Yeah, so she's fine, whatever. And the rest of the actors, like, I'm looking at the monsters. I don't really care about the rest of the actors, or even about those first 2. This movie has monsters. You're going to see some, like, skeleton sort of demon kind of guys that get summoned by an evil sorceress. For a big chunk of the movie, you get to interact with the stop motion baboon. I mean, it's just like a regular baboon, but he's all done by stop motion. I mean, they didn't bring like a real baboon on the set to film this because they wanted to give him like more human expressions and kind of make him like kind of act in a way. And I think they pulled it off pretty well. I mean, it's pretty obvious it's a special effect and not a real baboon, but it works for me. It's a cool looking monster. You get your Minotaur. Minotaur is like a 7-foot tall bronze Minotaur. Yeah, he kind of moves like a robot. In some scenes, he's a stop motion special effect. In other scenes, it's actually an actor in a suit. And guess who's in that suit? None other than Peter Mayhew, who also coincidentally starred in another movie that came out the very same year. Starred as Chewbacca in Star Wars, the first Star Wars movie, 1977. Same year as Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. Then you get a giant wasp. You know, that's all stop motion. And bzzz. I mean, it's not giant like bigger than a human. It's actually about, I don't know, about the size of my head. You also get a saber-toothed cat, which is the titular tiger in this movie. You get Trog. Trog is one of my favorites in this movie. Just because he's just this big, like 9-foot tall, primitive, hairy caveman with a big horn growing out of the top of his head. He's pretty cool. He's pretty expressive. He doesn't really speak, but he actually ends up being a hero as well. And he's a character. Like, I mean, it's like him and the baboon. I mean, these are just special effects thrown on the screen. But they actually play characters and interact with the other characters and stuff, and that's actually pretty cool. You know, you didn't see a lot of that stuff in 1977, but hands down, my favorite in this movie, my favorite monster has to be the giant walrus. I mean, look at this guy. And the giant walrus, like, really kind of fucks up Sinbad and his crew, like, pretty bad. I'm pretty sure he kills, like, 2 or 3 guys. But, sadly his screen time is cut kind of short, and so is his life. They eventually spear him to death, I believe. How many other movies do you get to see a giant walrus? Well, there is one other one. I do believe Toho made a movie with a giant walrus in it. I can't remember the name of the movie, though. So yeah, this was the third in the what I like to think of as the Sinbad Trilogy, starting in way back in 1958 with the seventh voyage of Sinbad, and then like 15 years later in 1973 they came out with the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which is actually my favorite one, I think, of the three. And then this one in 1977, 4 years later. So there's significant gaps between them, but they're all solid adventure movies. It makes me think a lot about Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, you play a game of Dungeons and Dragons, you want to have this quest, this adventure for your characters to go on, and all these little twists and turns and magic and monsters and all that stuff, and that's all in Sinbad movies. And they're actually some of the best, like, D&D movies that are out there, before the game was even really a thing. Like, also, one other notable thing about this movie is there's a scene that takes place in Petra, which is the archaeological site in Jordan, I believe, where it's cut into the canyon, and actually, like, the buildings are cut into the rock. Now, you might recognize that from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Well, I saw it here first in Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. This is where, like, the wise old sage hangs out and lives in the ruined Forbidden City or whatever. But yeah, I saw it in that movie, and I was like, oh, that's super cool. And I looked it up, and I saw it in the library, and more than 10 years later, I see it in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and I'm like, that's totally the same place. And I'd already knew what it was, and I already knew where it was, and all that stuff. And I just think it's cool that Sinbad did it first. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of trivia there, because I know you came here for useless facts, right? So there you go. Well, the storyline in this is pretty good, I'd have to say. Like I said, I don't really like the actors that much, but the story is fine. There's an evil sorceress transforms the heir to the throne, the prince, transforms him into a baboon, and they have to go on an adventure to cure him from being a baboon, all while fighting off this evil sorceress. But it's fun, and it's engaging, and there's little twists and turns, and you actually get, like, character development in the baboon, if you know what I mean. Like, not only, like, this guy, we see him as a human in the beginning, and then we see him as a baboon, and you kind of get a sense of, like, how he feels, like, holy fuck, I'm a baboon, like, what's going on? And, like, he doesn't speak through this whole thing, but you can actually get, like, a character arc out of this guy. I don't know, that's just a really well-made part of the story that I enjoyed, and I like this movie because of that. No, this is the walrus. So, for a letter grade, so I guess I'd probably go something like B+. I mean, it would be a B, like a good, solid movie, but it has that walrus, though. Like, until next time, have a good one out there, everybody.